Why are some podcasts just content and others are quietly turning into full businesses? Let's go. Hey, welcome to The Creative One. My name is Peter Blasto Sibeko. Thank you very much for joining me. And thank you for finding this episode. And this is a safe space for you, the creative one. This is where we look at anything that is creativity, and we look at the business side of it. That's the cool thing about it. And not just the art, but how you grow it, how you make it something of a brand, and then how you can have it pay your bills as such, right? So in today's episode, which is a cool one, we're going to be looking at the art of podcast marketing, right? And in today's guest is someone who has done, I think, what most podcasters are still trying to figure out. She's going to tell us more about that. It's Adelle Onyango, all the way from Kenya. She's the founder and the host of what I think is a podcast that is really impactful, one of the most impactful podcasts in the continent currently. She's built something that is really from storytelling, that is grown into a platform that is more of an ecosystem that includes live events and community partnerships and then a whole lot more that she does, which she'll tell us a bit about that, or a bit more about that. Adelle, welcome to The Creative One. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. And you pronounced my name perfectly.
I did. Oh, the producer has been saying that I didn't produce your name properly before we started. So I'm glad I got it right this time.
No, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. As I said, you've grown something that is really well put together. I've gone through some of the episodes. Really impressive. Love what you do. Tell us about that. Tell us about Legally Clueless. And I love the name, by the way.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the kind words and for recognizing our work. Legally Clueless started as primarily just a podcast. So my background is radio. I was in traditional radio as a presenter and as a producer for 10 years here in Kenya. Yeah. And by the time I was leaving, I was on the breakfast show of the third most listened to show and station in the country. And I think it was just an understanding for me that if I ever wanted to own my own new media company, I needed to jump, and I needed to jump then. And so when I left, because I did not know what I was doing, and obviously when you're living a glamorous job that everybody imagines you're rolling in millions in traditional media, people think you're crazy, and even you think you're crazy.
Yes.
So that's really where the name came from, Legally Clueless. And for the first couple of episodes that I try not to listen to because it's so embarrassing, I'm just like freaking out and wondering, like, am I alone when it comes to not knowing?
How long ago was this?
2019, March 11th, I think, is when our first episode went out.
That's just before COVID.
Just before COVID. So I was like ready, with my home studio and everything by the time COVID hit. But when I left, how it grew is just from that one podcast show to we went on tour across Kenya in the middle of COVID, in the middle of lockdown and curfews.
Yeah.
Then we went on tour to Paris and to Zimbabwe, also just like gathering African stories. So real, raw African stories is what that first show really stands for till today. And then it quickly became very clear to me that this could be a new media company. So I went back to the drawing board to say, okay, what does that look like? Is it enough to have one episode for a week? Is it enough to have one show? And so where we stand now is that, yes, we have our primary show that everybody, knows us for from 2019, but we have 3 other shows that we've added.
Oh, nice.
And it's to cater to, and we have wellness talks, wellness events, because through storytelling, it became clear that the community we serve, who are African women, there was need for a lot of wellness resources. And so all of these were like to build sustainability, but also to build a new media house. And I think that's one thing whenever I have these conversations, I like to drive home to African podcasters that yes, today it might just be a podcast, but allow yourself to dream, allow yourself to create new models of what a new media business looks like, allow yourself to break the rules, because that's the reason why from 2019 to date, we're still here.
Fantastic. It's a little over 5 years, and you've done all these things that we just mentioned, the tours and everything else that has come out of your podcast. So up to today, what would you say is the most misunderstood thing about starting a podcast?
Oh my God. I think it's the same as I'm very business oriented. So I feel like it's the same as any business that's not thievery.
Yeah.
I think people miss or underestimate how long it takes for you to build a rhythm, to build a product that can bring in revenue and that can bring in community. I think we live in a world where we see all of the views and all of these incredible jumps that happen, and we assume it's overnight, but it takes a long time. Even when I'm telling you we've created new shows, I've learned to be patient with them and kind of like understand how much work went into our first show and how much work needs to go into it before it can bring in, let's say, the revenue numbers that show number one does, right?
Yeah.
So I think we underestimate that, and you have to go in with a plan, even if it's, your savings or you have another source of running funds to keep you going until you've built a sustainable product and a sustainable model, really.
If you are a personality, what would you say the difference is between doing a podcast as a personal brand versus one that is for a business?
So I think I'll answer this in 3 parts, right? So the first part is like, I did a show for a traditional media house, which if we put on the lens of new media, we could say that could have been translated into a podcast. The big difference is that you were working for somebody else. You were bringing in millions, but probably your paycheck wasn't the same. You didn't have a lot of control when it comes to, programming and opinions and who can you interview? Where is the direction the show is going? And then I leave that and when I started Legally Clueless, which for the first couple of episodes, it was only my story. Before I started bringing in my friends, and then I started saying, actually, I'm curious about other Africans. Like, I want to hear other stories. There was first like the freedom. I think there's a freedom that is so incredible. From emotional freedom, because I was freaking out. So I could cry on an episode that has a sponsor. I'm like wiping my tears away. And I'm like, anyway, so the Women's Economic Fund. And whereas working for a more traditional setup, like expects you to be more robotic, which I don't think is a very good or efficient strategy, if you ask me. And so there's that freedom. And I think with all the shows that we've created, we've worked with very from the outside looking in, rigid companies as partners. We've developed shows for a lot of traditional, old school organizations. But because our identity of all the shows have been very human, have put me first as the host and like what is true to me, where am I at emotionally and caring about that, put the storytellers first, where are they emotionally, what matters to them. The traditional organizations have had to adapt to that, and it's worked in everyone's favor. And so I think the biggest difference is the freedom. There's emotional freedom, and then there's freedom to adapt faster. I feel like when something is not working, we can clearly see that, and we can quickly say, hey, change, change direction or pull it. It's not working.
Yep.
You know, which I feel like in more rigid structures, it takes a long time just because I don't know whether it's like the culture is much slower, or maybe even if it's the access to the numbers or the insights are much slower. So you adapt slower. So I feel like those are some of the things I enjoy. Honestly, it's the freedom. The freedom is incredible, and that you can create what a new media business looks like for us and for our community.
And would you say what you have created now has yours evolved into a media business, or would you classify it under personal brand?
On paper, it's a new media business. I am an employee of Legally Clueless Africa. And I have a board that I am answerable to.
Oh, nice.
There is plans for, because what I've seen with very many companies is that the founder then becomes a stumbling block because he's too emotionally invested. So there are plans for me to move to the board eventually. There are plans for me to stop hosting one of the shows as early as this year. So it is a new media business, and I'm looking at more of legacy and building sustainability over time.
And how many of these events do you do? I mean, how frequent do you do the events?
So the events are every second month. And that's for the wellness talks. And then we have our group therapy that we do 4 cohorts in a year. So they run for a couple of weeks, they pause, then we run for a couple of weeks, and then we pause. Yeah.
So every second month?
Every second month, yeah.
Yeah.
We actually have one on Saturday. This Saturday, we have one led by a therapist.
Your therapist, right?
My therapist.
Yeah. That's the episode that I caught, yes. Okay.
My therapist, yes.
And that's something interesting, and that's something that I'd like to sort of highlight or showcase to our audience as to how you do that. With your permission, of course, I'm going to take a clip out of your podcast. Can we do that?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's take a look at it.
Now, before we get into Patricia's story, I need to tell you about something really special that we have coming up, which is our wellness talk on the 11th of April. My personal therapist, Faith Guchu, who I sometimes lend to you, is going to be our guest speaker, and it's dubbed Becoming the Woman You Want to Be.
When do you think it is time, or the right time, to get to the stage for any podcast to be able to use this as a growth strategy? Seeing that you obviously are doing that with your podcast.
I think as early as possible. I think we started late, and it was purely, fear and probably overthinking. You can have an engaged community online, but I think when you can convert that to people physically coming and buying into a product, even better. And if you can build the muscle of what goes into preparing all of that, whether it's the logistics, whether it's looking for partners, whether it's the processes. So like now, at least we know, I think we've done it for 3.5 years now, at least the wellness talks. So we know how many weeks we need to take to market. We know we kind of have the processes in. I wish we started it earlier. So I don't think it's never too early, because even when we think about events, everybody's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to put out this event. No one in my community is going to come. It's going to be a flop. Even if 10 people come, it's data. And you can then start understanding, why did they come? Sometimes when you are the creator of a show, you in your studio believe that people are tuning in for thing A. But when you interact with your listeners, with your community, you start to actually understand, oh, wait, they like this other thing. Okay, so I need to boost that. Or they found out about the event on our Instagram page and not the podcast. So why are they on the Instagram page and they're not on the podcast? Where's the disconnect, So the earlier, the better. And also the risks are lower the earlier you started. Like,
Because you learn much earlier. Is that what you mean?
exactly. So I think it's never too early to start, but it could easily get to be too late for you to do it, right? And it's really important to have that kind of 360. If you look at how radio does it, there's always on-ground activation. So it's great to have, yes, all of these millions of people tuning in, but you've got to touch them. They've got to interact with the brand and the product. And events help you do that.
Yeah, this brings me to something interesting that I picked up at some point. So that these events that we got into at some point called See Africa, and there's a gentleman that was doing a talk, pretty much something similar to this conversation. And he was talking about podcasting because he owns the studios and he does podcasts and recordings and etc. etc. And he said, you got to know with podcasting two things. It's either you are selling an audience or you are selling to an audience. And those two things are very different and you've got to know it. For instance, in what we do, we're selling to an audience. We do not sell an audience. So the numbers are not that important for us because there is a particular niche segment of a market that is captured already that we sell to. And I guess in your case, it is selling an audience. Am I correct?
I think you can do both. COVID made me realize it is safer if you figure out how you can do both. So you have, they talk about having a business to business approach model or a business to client, or in this situation, business to your community or your audience. And you can do both if you're very intentional about the product. So for example, let's take our flagship show. And I always say this. So it's storytelling. It's different Africans coming on board, and people want to hear raw African stories of lived experiences of Africans. Our audience, that's the product for them. That's how we satisfy them. That's a promise we make to them, and we have to deliver every week. Mm-hmm. And then we get Creative One, telco coming on board and saying, we want to advertise with you guys. And then I kind of look at the gaps. So the gaps is you guys have fantastic products. You're transforming lives, but you don't know how to tell your story. We don't know who it is you're impacting. And so I work with you to find the people you're impacting who have a story that I know is going to satisfy my audience, but also helps you tell your story. Right. So I'm doing these two things at the same time. And that's one way of doing it. And I always say, I think this is an African thing. You can be an active participant in choosing who comes onto your platform as an advertiser. You can say no, especially if you see that it changes the product too much, that now the promise you make to your audience gets compromised. You can say no, right? And so for me, I always say, when we get advertising for that show specifically, if it's not a story that we would tell for free, we're not touching it, because that means it's going to change the product and we're going to fail on our promise to our audience. So I think you can do both. I think another example I can give is that when the advertisers are not there, for example, last year when Trump trumped and budgets were cut, he's still trumping, but budgets get cut, right?
Yeah.
You need to have something that's sustainable. So then we have things like our events. We're launching a shop later this year, and that's going directly to our consumers. So you have things that are going direct. I think if you can find a model, and I love how the person, that quote, right? I love it. If there's a way, depending on your product, that you can find a middle ground, it buffers you from when the world decides to do what the world does.
I get you. So the other important thing, I guess, and you mentioned to an extent earlier on, is distribution. I mean, obviously, you can put together good podcasts, you can put together good content, as well as the production thereof, whether you're pre-recording it or you're going live. But the distribution is obviously important. So what distribution strategy would you recommend? How do you get it right as far as distribution is concerned?
I think first and foremost, I used to have this this boss in traditional radio, and he always used to say, if you have a great show that only you and your mom know about, then only you and your mom are going to be listening to it, right? And so that touches on marketing and on distribution. I think it's important first to be clear, and I always tell podcasters, be clear about who your target audience is first.
Yeah.
And you build a target audience profile that includes many things, including where they consume podcasts and shows on. So for example, when we were getting in, and this I know was very different from South Africa, right? So when we were starting, iPhones weren't a thing in Kenya. It was not, they were not popular. They were seen as being too expensive. We never had, what is it called? Like financing for phones that hadn't gotten to us. And so Androids were bigger. And because podcasting was just like kind of kicking off on the continent, there were some platforms that weren't very Android friendly, and there were some that were, and people were still trying to understand, okay, long format audio, do we listen on SoundCloud? To date, we're still on SoundCloud, right? But would you imagine it when we started, that was our main platform, because people would listen to long format audio there. They would listen to DJ mixes there. They would listen to underground music there.
Yeah.
And so that's where our audience was at the time. Over the years, things changed for our core audience who are in Kenya. There was financing. The lifestyle marketing of iPhones changed. And so now we needed to understand, okay, so what platforms, where do we need to be? And then we had platforms like Spotify come in and pour a lot of marketing money. And initially they were seen to be too pricey. Then they really marketed heavily, localized their product. So I think you have to pay attention to where your target audience are and be on the platforms that matter to them. And for us, that also included traditional radio, which is why then we looked at syndication as both a revenue arm, but also as a distribution arm. So we, got on board on Trace East Africa because there was still a huge audience that we needed to reach in a traditional format and then convert and pique their interest. And then they'll be like, okay, so what is this thing? I heard the show and the story on Trace. What is this about? And then they get converted. So I really think you have to there is a science to the madness. You have to, whether you want to do very soft surveys, even just with the people that you know who are falling in line, even if it's gently or softly with your target audience, ask where people listen to this on. What are they doing when they listen to the podcast? Like really start to understand so that you're on those platforms that matter. Yeah.
Correct. But for you currently, which platforms have generated growth for you at the moment?
Do you know what is so crazy? Like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we get more from Apple Podcasts than Spotify currently.
Oh, really?
And it's also because we put a lot of push into our diaspora audience. So that also contributes to it. And we got into a program that really markets to a diaspora audience. And so I think that's definitely what's driving it. But sometimes they go toe to toe. At
what point, and I know you said from your side, you started maybe not as early as you would have liked to, but you didn't start recently in as far as bringing in other elements like eventing and other things that you do as an ecosystem. But how did you intentionally evolve into that full ecosystem? So beyond just listening or just the downloads and that?
A lot of the content in the show when I would speak would touch on wellness. And I'm a huge fan of therapy, of trying even alternative wellness activities. And so with time, I kind of would talk about my therapist a lot, and just kind of like, you could hear the transformation, even just if you were listening from episode 1. And so it was a very genuine way in which we evolved to, maybe we should do group therapy. What does that look like? How do we do it in a safe way? And it didn't initially start off as, we need to do this as a strategy, etc. We kind of just tumbled into it. And once we did it, I realized, okay, now I need to understand our community who shows up for this better. And so I'd have conversations and surveys with those who attend and be like, why did you come for this? What were your apprehensions, for me to understand those who probably didn't come? And then I got to understand, first, we have a diaspora audience who want to be part of this thing. So now we need to develop other talks or other products where that they can still touch wellness, right? And then got to understand the fears of therapy, and it's like a heavy word. And so we said, okay, we're going to have talks. And this is like nice and softer. I got to understand that people want to learn more about finances. That directly impacts their wellness. They want to learn more about fitness, nutrition. And then we got a lot more strategic about it. But initially, it was just like, I really like therapy. Do you guys want to come for group therapy? And then we stumbled into like, having more structure after that.
Yes. Okay, so we're quickly running out of time. And before we get out of here, what we usually do is we take a look at 4 rules of thumb. I know you spoke about, time as well as the planning and all the nuggets that you've given us. But what are the 4 rules of thumbs in as far as podcast marketing is concerned?
Okay, the first one I would say is product, right?
Okay.
If you market a crap product, there's only so far it's going to go. So we need to spend as much time first making sure the product is good. It means you have to have your prep sheets. Even if it's a banter show, there needs to be a prep sheet that guides the flow of the conversation. Read up on this, put together a good product, number 1. Number 2 is when you're pushing out your product, understand that there are people who are discovering your show for the first time every time. So keep that top of mind. Even when you're recording the show, bring new listeners up to date. When you're pushing it out there, understand there's people who are discovering your show for the first time, even if you're 10 years old. Even for us, there's people who are like, where have I been? This show, and we have like over 500 episodes across all our shows. And it's just always something to keep top of mind. When you are marketing and you're putting your podcast out there in however you decide to do it, there should be no emotions, right? Go back to your target audience and ask yourself, does this matter to them? You might want to put up a clip, etc., that you had most fun at that point of that episode, but your target audience really doesn't give a damn about that bit. And it's not personal. Go back and do everything by the target audience. One thing I will say here, asterisk, I know we're running out of time, but when I was on traditional radio, we had a target audience profile, and she had a name. Every time we were making a decision about the show, we asked, does so-and-so give a damn about this? And if it was no, it didn't matter. If it was trending across the globe, it was thrown out. So that's how you need to approach pushing your show out there. Now, the 4th one is so important because this is how we get past traditional media. Adapt or die. Even when it comes to like your marketing strategies, adapt or die. And you have the edge of adapting faster. You have the insights that can lead you to adapt faster. You can adapt your processes faster. You need to be on top of every single article that's talking about AI to figure out how can your processes be faster and more efficient in an ethical way as is possible, but adapt or die.
Fantastic. So it's a good product. It's number one. Number two, there's always first timers. Bear that in mind. And does this really matter? Ask yourself that question. It's number three. Does this really matter to your audience specifically? So your target market is key here. And the last one is adapt or die. Ladies and gentlemen, Adelle Onyango, all the way from Kenya. Thank you so much for taking this time and sharing all the insights and all the things that you've come on to the Creative One with. And we wish you all the best with what you're doing. And may you grow, may you get onto that board and create more shows and create more road shows. And come to South Africa as well while you're at it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and kudos on the work that you're doing. I think these conversations are so important, especially for African creators. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Adelle. Cheers.